So it might be worth answering the question of why should we have friends in the first place? What's the point of having a friendship? And it comes to mind for me that it can seem like having a friend and socializing is something that we're expected to do from an external perspective, and it might not be obvious to your child that friendship and interacting with something with other people is something that can actually be enjoyed, is something that other people actually enjoy doing and seek out doing because they like doing it. um, if I've had a bunch of negative experiences trying to reach out and connect with other people, and it just has not been fun at all, the first step to making friends is realizing that if I do have success in this area, then I'm actually going to have fun. I'm actually going to open the door to lots of different ways of playing and lots of different interactions that I would otherwise not be able to do by myself.
Definitely. And I think it was incredibly important as a parent to have my child experience different perspectives and different ideas because we did very much have a closed mindset that everyone thought the same and everyone felt the same and everyone had a pre-established knowledge that they were working from. And it was a huge comfort to actually have a friend come up and say, actually, I'm a bit nervous too. Or, yeah, I didn't sleep a lot on camp. Actually, I didn't like that bit too much, but I really like this bit. And just sharing a different perspective in a healthy way, in a kind and sensitive and inclusive environment is really rewarding. And it shows that you can all experience things differently, but that difference is enriching and interesting and diverse. It's not limiting. Children with autism can be more vulnerable when building and assessing suitable friendships due to the challenges with reading and interpreting and engaging in social communication and behaviour. Good friends are caring, they show integrity and reciprocity. People who are not your friend often have different core values. They think differently about what's fair and unfair, what's true, how important truthfulness is, and behave in ways that are unkind or disrespectful or attention seeking or controlling at the expense of your feelings. Maintaining good friendships require kindness and openness and flexibility and effort. A good friend is also somebody who will forgive mistakes, and it doesn't have to be done immediately. In fact, it's very hard to process forgiveness and feelings in a very short time frame. But it is important to process those and look really at a friendship as a whole and say, overall, it's actually a really good friendship, but I made a mistake because I didn't read that situation well, or I didn't understand that boundary. And that's where children can really receive the most support in understanding when to reinvest and maintain a friendship and when it's probably healthier just to let it go.
It was also really difficult for me to understand that if someone was angry at me yesterday, they might feel differently towards me today. So if I was told off, if I did something wrong, if I made a mistake, I just naturally assumed that that was it forever and I'd completely burned that bridge. Whereas realizing that people have emotions, what are emotions? Emotions come, emotions go. People say things in the moment that they might not necessarily say when they're feeling differently. And understanding that level of emotion helped me to maintain friendships rather than thinking that they have to be good all the time. Otherwise, I've messed up again and I just have to start from square one again.
And that's a really important point too, Paul, about self-forgiveness, to teach that to children as well. Because it's impossible to get things right all of the time. It's impossible to be perfect. And it's not a realistic expectation. Everyone has good and bad days. Everyone is tired and isn't able to do their best all the time. So it's important to be able to forgive yourself for the mistakes that you make, as well as forgiving your friends when they've done something accidentally. And I think that's probably the focus, that the intent wasn't there to devalue or not appreciate you or to reveal sort of private or personal information. It was something that was done without thought or meditation, and it simply went wrong.
And the real test of a friendship is in the actions. Friendship is not something that we feel. It's not something in the mind. It's not a belief. Ultimately, it's about, do we spend time together? Are we kind to each other? Do we look out for each other? What do we physically do? So you can test a friendship. You can see, am I still friends with this person? You can say, hey, would you like to play? And if they say yes, it means that they're happy to spend time with you. If you say, um, would you like to meet up? Would you like to play this game? Would you like to chat? And they say no, well, they're telling you that they don't really want to spend time with you. They don't really want to be your friend. So I used to be really confused as to, how do I know who's my friend and who's not my friend? And actually, it's relatively simple if we have the courage to test and find out, even if the answer might be no.
There's definitely that element of courage and risk taking as well, to be vulnerable, and when it's okay to be vulnerable, if that information is dealt with kindly and looked after, and there is an acceptance of you as a whole person, good, bad, challenges, changes, everything. And you can test friendships and you can move friendships and friendships can change. And I think it's always important to emphasize that once children learn about what positive relationships are, to not compromise on those values, to not be lured into a popular activity or group, or if it contradicts what those core values are, about trust and fairness and kindness and consideration, and understand that those values are what we start to use to build our own individual identities, and that those things are important, and that we shouldn't compromise those things because they do matter, and we need to build that self-confidence and self-respect to be able to say, this is what I stand for, and these are the things that are important to me.
And it's worth remembering that these are really complex skills. I mean, I do life coaching as an adult and speak to people all the time who have trouble asserting themselves and saying, this is who I am, these are the values that I am happy with. It's hard to stand up for what you believe in when the culture around you or the people around you are pressuring you into different ways. So, all we can do is help our children to understand what we're dealing with, and to do the best with the situation that we have. These kind of skills are the kind that we constantly improve. The earlier we start to learn these skills, the more practice we have, so that when we do get into those tricky situations, especially as an adult, we have some practice and experience to draw from.
And as a parent, this is an opportunity to open a confidential bridge of conversation with our child, so that we want to listen, just to listen about what's happening and with their friendship groups and their interactions, so that we can build up that level of trust that sometimes as a parent, it's not our role to direct behavior or to direct choices, that ideally we want to build our children up so that they're able to do it for themselves. And this is one of those topics where we can start building that rapport, where we can say, hey, I just like to listen. Oh, that sounds great. Or, oh, it sounds, that was a bit tricky. How do you feel about that? But you're asking questions rather than offering solutions or direction. We can open up that really positive communication with our children so that when the friendships become more complex, when they become more mature, when children are dealing with a lot more challenging social issues, hopefully we have that communication so that we do have still a link with our teenagers and our children as they become adults, so that we are still that resource that they can rely on if they need us.
So, when learning how to make friends, just like any skill that we learn through practice. And every time we make some little amount of progress, it feels fantastic to feel like I'm getting better at this. Um, and again, just like with every skill, it's made up of micro skills. So if I test a little micro skill, maybe a micro skill is saying hello to someone. Maybe a micro skill is um, saying yes when someone invites me to play. Or I remember the very, very first time I went over to a friend's place after school when I was 5 years old. I was absolutely petrified of what do I do in this situation. It turns out it was actually completely fine. I had no idea what to do or how to do it, but somehow it worked. And that gave me such a huge amount of confidence that, wow, I actually can do this. So, setting people up for success, putting our children into situations where they're likely to have a good experience can really help to build that self-confidence and the internal motivation that this is something that I can do and is worth actually learning. So, Shannan, when learning how to make friends, what's the most important thing for you as a parent when you're helping your son to learn how to make friends?
I think the most important thing is to have a picture in mind about what good friendship looks like and what those positive traits are, and also what the negative traits are so that we can avoid trying to build a friendship with somebody who maybe doesn't accept us for who we are, or doesn't value or return the effort of friendship to us.
So, from my perspective, the thing that made the most difference was understanding that everyone else was learning too. The other kids in my class didn't have some kind of super knowledge that I was missing out on. The fact that I didn't know what to do was actually totally normal, and I was supposed to just try anyway. So, for children that don't really have a explicit concept of what friendship is, we end up making something up. So it can be very helpful to talk about these things in the open, because it's the kind of thing that traditionally we've just let children figure out for themselves. And for autistic children, we've found that that doesn't usually work very well. We tend to benefit from explicitly learning how things work, especially in social situations.